greatest consumer drone ever made. We're gonna show you why. It's got 2 cameras. Oh, we should have splurged for the booty. It's like 5 degrees out here. Water is freezing. Oh, I'm really dreading falling in. My feet are freezing. Anybody else want to have a go?
I started thinking you're probably getting a bit tired and cold out there.
Those booties would have been well worth it.
But the beanie warms your head at least.
Yeah, I forgot it on. It was great. It's proof. There's a lot of comments about how they didn't show my crashes. You didn't edit my crashes, but I didn't have any crashes, so they weren't on the show.
Oh. Where's the drone? In the air.
It's got 47 minutes of battery life. You can just keep it up there forever. That's nuts.
It's so cold! I couldn't press the button anymore. I had to use my left hand to push it down.
Can't feel the hand anymore.
Yeah, I couldn't.
The Mavic 3 is the first ever dual camera consumer drone. And let me tell you, that main camera is nuts. It's a 4/3 inch sensor. So it's like having a GH5 in the sky. 5.1K, up to 50 frames per second, 10-bit 422. And with the CINE version, you also get ProRes HQ. And that's not all. In a future update, they're saying in January or so, you're gonna get 120 frames per second in 4K, and in 1080, you're gonna get 200 frames per second. So the main camera is like a 24mm equivalent, and then you have the second camera, which is a telezoom, which is 160mm equivalent. That's a 7 times optical zoom. It's like they took the previous gen Mavic 2 Pro and Zoom and just put it into one. Now that camera only does 4K up to 30 frames per second, so it's definitely not as good as the main camera. The obstacle avoidance has gotten better now. They're saying that you can fly laterally and backwards also and have some nice obstacle avoidance. Now I don't rely on these, but if you do, you'll probably be happy. And get this, a 15-kilometer transmission range. And that's in 1080 60 frames per second, which I think is a first for these consumer drones. I don't really need 60 frames per second, but maybe you do. But 15 kilometers is absolutely nuts. That's so far. Now, unfortunately, we didn't really get to test that at all because the firmware that we were on right now was very buggy. If you didn't know, when we get sent these drones early, they're usually pre-production, and especially the firmware is like still being figured out, and our firmware was very buggy. The controller and the drone, they were just disconnecting from each other and it was returning to home, and then finally we figured out if we just set it manually to 5.8 gigahertz, and basically we got it to work, but not optimally. We couldn't test the range at all. It was still really buggy. But I think DJI lives up to their word, and 15 kilometers is more than I would ever need. But I hope that also means that we're just gonna have a lot more stable connection, especially if you're flying through trees or whatever like that. But with 15 kilometers, you're also gonna need crazy battery life, and we have that. 46 minutes of battery life on one battery. That's absolutely nuts. I think the previous consumer drones are all around like 30, 35 minutes. 46 minutes. That is a huge upgrade, and I love that. 72 kilometers per hour max speed. And with the CINE version, we have a built-in 1 terabyte storage. That's like one of the best features for me. There's so many times where I just forget those little micro SD cards, or we've offloaded footage and it's on the computer table and it's not with us. It's just so nice having that built in. 1 terabyte, that's huge. Even with the ProRes HQ, you're gonna have a lot of space for filming. So yeah, that's one of my favorite updates. This really is the greatest consumer drone ever made by quite a bit. But that also comes at a cost. This is quite a bit bigger than we're used to. For example, this is the Air 2S. This is the new Mavic 3. Mavic 3 Mini 2. So this is a lot bigger just in terms of the drone, but also the batteries are quite a bit bigger. So this is an Air 2S battery and this is the Mavic 3 battery. So yeah, it's gonna take up a lot more space in your camera bag. And I'm seeing this trend of companies starting to make their products a little bit bigger and putting in more performance, more features. Whereas for a long time, companies were just trying to make their products smaller and smaller. And so I like this. There's definitely a time and place where I don't care if it's a little bit bigger. I want the best quality. Like if I'm in Norway on some crazy epic trip, I want this. I want the full quality, the best quality I can get. And this is gonna deliver even though it is a little bit bigger in size. And if you like the music in today's video, you will love today's sponsor, Epidemic Sound. They are the best place to get music for your videos. They have over 35,000 tracks, 90,000 sound effects, and best of all, at an affordable price. They have an affordable plan if you're making videos for other clients. It is the best place to get music. Pro tip, I've said this before, if you're searching music, you can actually use the arrow keys to really quickly go through, skip songs, and then skim through and listen to them. That usually takes the longest, trying to actually find the right song for your video. And if you didn't know, their sound effects are incredible. We use them all the time. Over 90,000 sound effects. Pretty much anything you can think of, just type it in, download it, use it in your video. Thank you so much, Epidemic Sound, for sponsoring this video. And when are we going on the next Epidemic Sound trip? We gotta do something epic. I don't know, where should we go? Me, Peter, Epidemic Sound, somewhere really cool? Okay, so let's get back to the cameras. How are they? First of all, I wanna hear your thoughts. What did the footage look like to you? Comment down below. I really wanna know, could you guys see much of a difference? What did it seem like to you? To me, it's much better than I've had in any of the other DJI drones, which are already pretty much the best. Yeah, they're the best in terms of video quality. This thing packs a punch. To have a 4/3 inch sensor in the sky with ProRes 5.1K, it's more than we could ask for, and the image is, in my opinion, a lot nicer than I'm used to on the DJI consumer drones, especially in terms of the colors. The dynamic range seems to be a little bit better in my opinion, but the colors are much nicer and way easier to correct and get to a nice place. Usually we struggle a little bit with getting the colors really nice out of the drones. And with ProRes HQ, you're not gonna have any issues with that. Now I did notice that the footage seems to be a little bit too sharpened in my opinion, and I couldn't find anything in the settings to turn down the sharpness. I assume that'll be added later in firmware. So that's something that I hope is gonna get changed, but overall the image looks really nice. I love having ProRes. It works really well for color grading, works super nicely for editing. Usually DJI codecs are a little bit tricky in the editing programs and they're skipping a lot and stuttering. ProRes, no issues ever. But of course, you are gonna have a lot of data. Just from that one day, we had 866 gigs of footage, which that adds up really fast. So I'm hoping they do enable some of the other flavors of ProRes. I would love to have ProRes LT when I don't need all of that data. I probably never really need ProRes HQ. ProRes LT would be really nice. I think that's half the data, so that would really help. I'm also really curious about the low light performance. I didn't have a chance to test it out, but my friend Peter Lindgren, incredible filmmaker, YouTuber, you guys should definitely check him out. He tested it out and he was filming at ISO 3200 and the footage looks pretty great. So from what I'm seeing so far, this might be one of the best, if not the best, low light consumer drone out there. Either way, it's definitely the highest quality video that you're gonna get out of a consumer drone. And then let's talk about that telephoto zoom lens camera. And that one, I'm a little bit perplexed by. I just, it doesn't look very good to me. We had a bunch of issues. It just doesn't look that good. And then the autofocus was just like, it felt like it couldn't focus most of the time, especially comparing it to the main camera, the telephoto zoom lens camera. Just, it's not that great. It also just feels way too zoomed in. 7 times zoom is like a crazy amount of zoom. And so it was a little bit awkward to use and was really hard to figure out how I could get some cool shots with it. And it's 4K 30 frames per second. It doesn't really match. And then I started thinking, maybe this isn't for filmmakers. Maybe the zoom lens is for, more practical uses of a drone. For example, you're some like construction person. Sorry, this is not my field of expertise, but maybe you need to do some scouting and you need to zoom in on something to see what's happening. I feel like that's what the second camera is made for, more so, not really for us filmmakers. I assume, I hope it's not to be able to just say that we have a 7 times zoom, because I think it's kind of, I don't know, kind of pointless. Even just zooming in 2.5 times on the main camera, the quality's so good still, especially compared to that telephoto zoom lens. And you have a smaller sensor on that camera, it's just not as capable. So yeah, I'm a little bit confused on that. I would love, maybe you guys have some feedback, maybe you have some ideas for what it could be good for, but I'm really struggling to find like a good use for it. And this review is kind of short because a lot of the fancy features we don't actually have yet on this firmware. The new firmware that's gonna have a lot more features is coming in January. We're gonna have that 4K 120 frames per second, master shots, hyperlapse, quick shots, panorama, quick transfer, 4G transmission, and the new Active Track 5.0, which is supposed to be really good. None of that is in here yet, so we're gonna have to wait around. And I'm really curious to try some hyperlapses because this is a bigger drone, so it should be more stable in the air. Plus 46 minutes of flight time, you're gonna be able to do some really cool hyperlapses. So I'm excited for that, but we're just gonna have to wait for January to get all of those fancy extra features for this drone. There's 2 different versions. There's the Mavic 3 and the Mavic 3 CINE. The only difference is with the CINE, you're gonna get ProRes HQ and the 1 terabyte storage built in. And I feel like that's totally worth it. I think if you're gonna go for the Mavic 3, you might as well just go for the Mavic 3 CINE. That being said, I have no idea what the prices are right now. I haven't been told what the prices are. I assume it's gonna be quite expensive. Do not expect this to be a cheap drone, especially the CINE version, because even just a 1 terabyte SSD is gonna cost you quite a bit. So this is not a consumer drone for the masses. It is for the people that want the best of the best, the highest quality, the professional filmmakers. I'm not sure what that telephoto is for yet, but this is not an entry-level drone by any means. This is like top of the line, but you don't want to go Inspire massive drone yet. This will be your guy, and it's probably going to cost you, I don't know how much. DJI has dominated the drone space for so long, and they are just continuing to dominate. Well done, DJI. And we survived Techtober, Tech September. Way too much tech products coming out. We were a little overwhelmed, but it's been fun testing out everything. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know if you guys have any questions, comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.
Are you feeling better about not being able to ride the jetboard?
Look at this thing. Just ripping.
We decided that Tyler gets to drive the speedboat because he didn't get to drive the jetboard. Well, we got some footage. There was no crashes.
Figured it out.
We figured it out.